Hello everyone and welcome back to the Pokemon Regional Championships here in beautiful, beautiful, rainy Knoxville. I'm Sierra Dawn, joined with Aaron yet again as we're getting ready for our next match. I mean, we have a lot of hype now from the day. I feel like all of our matches have been really good, so a lot of expectations for the rest of the day on what we can see.
Yeah, my favorite for an...
Yeah, a lot of unique Pokemon all around. Cannot wait to see what comes out to the field as we get started with our first match. What's not unique is going to be the Palafin and Talonflame over on Jimmy's end, and that's going to be facing off against the Mousehold and Fluttermane.
Yeah, so this Fluttermane, first of all, you can know that it's really, really bulky if you look at its HP stat. We're definitely running more kind of defensive investment than a lot of standard Fluttermanes that are just like max special attack and max speed. I love this on the Mousehold, by the way. You can see the feints there, and so feint, a really cool move for a bunch of different reasons. One, you can obviously break through Protect. Two, you can kind of break through Focus Sashes as well. And so, yeah, that's this is the supportive Mousehold set. It doesn't have something like Population Bomb, doesn't need Beat Up because there's no Annihilate on the team either. And so normally Fluttermane is like a really frail Pokemon, and Palafin and Talonflame could like Brave Bird and Jet Punch into it. But here with Friend Guard and the amount of defense on it, it's actually a lot better positioned.
Well, the Palafin is not going on the offensive whatsoever, instead swapping out. That'll bring in the Iron Hand, and there could be that pressure from the Iron Hand's next turn, and also the Zero to Hero activated with the Palafin switching out. That's still going to be Follow Me Household, and that's going to make sure that the Brave Bird targets into that a good chunk of damage and a little bit of recoil. Now, though, the Fluttermane can go and fire off this Dazzling Gleam. Neither Pokemon appreciates it, though the Iron Hand takes it pretty well. Yeah,
I feel like every time I see Iron Hands eat up a super effective attack from a Choice Specs Fluttermane, I'm like, how are you so bulky?
Right?
Like, it's a Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam, but it's Assault Vest Iron Hands on the opposing side. And I am curious if that's a damage roll. Like, it is just over 50%, so if another Dazzling Gleam, like, got a higher roll, potentially you have the ability to get a double knockout right now. Helping Hand, also a really, really great move here to try to secure the knockout. And so, yeah, support Mousehold, you called it earlier, it was a set that really popped up, I feel like, in OCIC. A lot of top players in Day 2 were using it, and here we're seeing it support the Fluttermane, which is normally seen as a conventionally really frail Pokemon, but between the bulk on Fluttermane plus this Friend Guard, it's a lot easier for Fluttermane to feel safe. And right now, the Dazzling Gleam just applies so much pressure into Jimmy's team.
Yeah, being able to just go for the Dazzling Gleams, that's going to be a lot more damage now with the thanks of the Helping Hand. You were talking about that potential of a roll or anything else, and because of that, it'll be the Fake Out into the Mousehold, but it's already moved. It's all good. It's going to be a lot of damage from the Brave Bird, but not enough thanks to that Friend Guard. And that's going to be a KO in response thanks to that recoil. So now it is going to be a Dazzling Gleam, single target Helping Hand. That is more than enough.
Yeah, very, very quick start to the game here for Anton. And for Jimmy's end, I think there's not really too much else you could do in that position to kind of not get knocked out by Dazzling Gleam other than switch out the Iron Hands. Like, Helping Hand plus Dazzling was always really safe, and you can see exactly the Friend Guard and the bulk on Fluttermane paying off as it's able to survive a Life Orb Brave Bird, right? And Scream Tail, it hits the field, but, you know, how much work can it put in right now? Now, the key thing is that you have positioned the Palafin in, right? And Palafin is incredibly powerful here. If you look at Anton's team, there's only one Pokemon that really can deal with it, and that's going to be the Iron Bundle in the back potentially. So, all right, let's see what Screamtail can get up to right now. It can, you know, even do some decent damage with Psychic Fangs, and so you have the pressure of like Psychic Fangs and just Jet Punch right now.
Yeah, I mean, Palafin is one of those Pokemon that can definitely be carrying the weight of a team on its back as long as you can get the Palafin enabled and in the correct spot. I mean, in the hero form, it's just absolutely incredible. It's going to make sure that it's preserved this time around, though, just with that Protect. Mousehold on the other end. Both players wanting to make sure their Pokemon can make it through into the next turn.
Oh.
The Screamtail with the disabled, though, that was into the Mousehold, and that is going to be doing absolutely nothing. So now the Fluttermane can fire off yet another Dazzling Gleam.
Yeah, so I think there the idea was to try to not take any damage with Palafin, since Screamtail is fairly bulky, as you can see, and try to disable a Follow Me, so then the subsequent turn you can just go for a Jet Punch, but Anton there doesn't really fall for it, and so get some free damage off with the Dazzling Gleam. Critically though, you know, right now Jimmy's Pokemon are actually still fairly bulky, and the Screamtail took that Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam pretty well, so Talonflame comes out here, but, you know, Talonflame's not exactly the best Pokemon to have out against a Palafin, and here's the Terra.
Yeah, the Talonflame, it's not liking the Palafin whatsoever. And the Palafin, speaking of, is going to be terrestrializing into that water type. You thought that it hit hard before. Well, I got news for you because that is going to hurt. That is going to be priority jet punch in this case, right
into the
Talon Flame. It hits the field just to get instantly KO'd.
And that, gets rid of potential Brave Bird. There's the disable. That is such a good move, especially against the choice specs Flutter main. Disable now really putting it in a tough position. And I think one critical thing here as well, there is no Iron Bundle. However, Roaring Moon also a decent answer into the Palafin. I think what's critical here is kind of what you can get out of the Screamtail right now, right? Screamtail's Psychic Fang's not really going to do anything into Roaring Moon. Flutter main's in a really awkward position right now, right? Like, you either just kind of go make the switch, right, in order to kind of get out of Disable, or maybe you fear that you want to actually protect Mouse Hold, so I could see some players like just kind of giving up the Flutter main here, but yeah, the switch is pretty safe. So the question is, like, how much damage can Palafin and Roaring Moon do to each other, basically? Because Roaring Moon, of course, resists the Water-type attacks right now, given its Dragon typing, but Palafin with Wave Crash, that still really hurts, and if you end up, like, using your strongest move into Palafin, Palafin protects, and the Screamtail can disable you as well. So Disable really, really scary right now.
Yeah, it's one of those mind games, like, you really have to be thinking through all of the options because, sure, we have open team sheets, but when you know what's on the horizon, sometimes that can make things just a little scarier. It will be the swap out for the Flutter main, bringing the Mouse Hold in, as the Palafin does go for the Protect, making sure, yet again, the Screamtail can try and punish, and that will be the Thunder Wave. It'll slow this down, and also the chance of paralysis on the Roaring Moon.
Yeah, this is honestly going to be really close. Like, the key thing here is that the opposing Screamtail just can't actually do damage into Roaring Moon unless Roaring Moon actually goes for a Terra, right? And so, okay, yeah, we see the Mouse Hold here. I like the idea. Okay, just going all in here. Oh, the scary thing here, though, is if you end up getting paralyzed. And so I like the decision, though, because I think Anton recognizes, hey, like, your Screamtail isn't actually putting on any offensive pressure at the moment, and the only way you can really KO my Roaring Moon is through your Palafin. So I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to go for the Terra. I know I have Friend Guard right now, and so even if you end up, wave crashing into me, I should survive, but that Thunder Wave earlier certainly makes things a little scarier. But good decision there to not Acrobatics previously so you don't get disabled, and now you can go for it. So all in this turn here.
All in, and we'll have to see if it's enough. It'll be that Jet Punch from the Palafin to first be able to fire off and take care of the Mouse Hold to bring Anton down to his final 2 Pokemon. And it's going to be now Encore, so it will be locked at this point. This Roaring Moon.
Oh, and it gets paralyzed!
Paralyzed anyways. That's a tough blow.
Yeah, so the Encore there was really smart. Essentially, like, I think that last turn is really safe for the most part. And the idea is then, Flutter main's choice specs, right? So you can just Jet Punch to knock that out. Now you can disable the Roaring Moon. And so the question is whether or not Roaring Moon would have gotten the knockout onto the opposing Palafin with that Helping Hand, attack, because then you kind of get Encored into the Throat Chop instead. But you can see how good this Screamtail is, right? It was able to disable the Flutter main earlier. It was able to paralyze Roaring Moon. That turned into a full paralysis. It was able to Encore as well. And now I think it's very clear from Jimmy's end. You just Jet Punch, get rid of the Palafin, or use Palafin to get rid of the Flutter main, and then you just disable now into the Roaring Moon. So, man, what a crazy, crazy comeback here. Down 2-4. The game's technically not over yet, but there's the disable.
Yeah, it's not over till it's over, technically, but it looks pretty over. This Roaring Moon, I mean, it's Encored. The Throat Chop is disabled. It's paralyzed. That is going to be throwing in the towel for Anton in that first game, and Screamtail doing the most. It doesn't need to go on the offensive to just be the biggest threat out there. I mean, shutting everything down. That was incredible.
Yeah, I think so. One thing you can point to in this game where it's like Jimmy's down 2-4, but he brings this comeback partially because Palafin is just so well positioned. And so if you look at Anton's team, what are your best answers to Palafin? We saw Roaring Moon come out in this one, but Roaring Moon itself had to face that Encore Disable combination, right? I am still so curious about that damage roll as to whether or not, had the chance to knock out if the paralysis didn't happen. But the other Pokemon that did not come out into that matchup, which I think is really critical, is the Iron Bundle, because the Iron Bundle, of course, can resist those Water-type attacks. Talonflame came out in that battle, it did absolutely nothing, right? So if you had Iron Bundle instead as a switch in there, you would have been able to take the Water-type attack. Iron Bundle also pressures with Freeze Dry, so that's a little bit more offense onto the opposing side. But that Screamtail is legit. Like, how do you actually deal with it, right? I think, like, part of the response is let me just try to target around it. But what makes that really difficult is normally you'll like launch a really powerful attack off into the partner Pokemon next to Screamtail, but then you just get encored and disabled, right? And so, yeah, I think it's actually really, really tricky. I think if you want to beat the Palafin, which looked amazing in that last game, you need to go with both the Iron Bundle and the Roaring Moon into this matchup. Otherwise, it's going to be so tricky. And Jimmy was down pretty considerably in that early game as well, and he still managed to, you know, find that victory. So what a beautifully played game with Screamtail.
Is so incredible. The perfect partner to it with that Palafin as well. I mean, we knew Palafin would be strong, and it's going to make an appearance to start things off right away for that reason, paired next to the Talonflame. Adjustment, though, that you were talking about that you like, it will be the Iron Bundle leading things off next to the Fluttermane.
Yeah, so, you know, this time around, there is no immediate Friend Guard support for the Fluttermanes. The Fluttermane does actually have to respect a potential just Brave Bird into it, right? So one thing you could do for that is switch the Fluttermane out. You could also switch Bundle out into the Mousehold, get that Friend Guard immediately. I think the main thing that's a little bit awkward for Jimmy right now is, you know, you have Palafin out. Palafin not really that great into Iron Bundle, so you normally want to consider switching out. Previously, we had seen a, you know, a pivot into that Iron Hands, which I think makes a lot of sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy just went with the same 4 Pokemon, worked out really well last turn. But yeah, I think the thing right now with Fluttermane is it's actually kind of in a volatile position. Like Talonflame didn't really even need to Tailwind in that previous game, and okay, there's the switch, but no switches here from Anton's end. What is Talonflame going to go for? Because a Brave Bird immediately could be pretty scary.
Yeah, the Palafin, of course, being able to activate the 0 to hero, get in the back, the Screamtail, making its appearance onto the field. The Talonflame, though, is the big question mark. It could be the big impact. And there it is. The Brave Bird into the Fluttermane. It's gone. It's out of there already. An early KO for Jimmy. Sure, there'll be a lot of recoil damage, but still, getting something like the Fluttermane out to start is incredible. Hydro Pump, that is going to land. It will take care of the Talonflame, just a little too late.
I always have to hold my breath every time I see an Iron Bundle use Hydro Pump because I get so stressed for it, right? Because it's the accuracy of that
you
is
know
just
about inaccurate moves.
Accuracy, especially, you know, from a Water-type Pokemon, not the best, but the Iron Bundle here also does appear to be a little bulkier, right? And so I think what's interesting about Anton's team is he's using all these Paradox Pokemon, but it's clear he's invested a lot of bulk into it. But yeah, without the Friend Guard support, Brave Bird is able to just get that knockout anyway, and then at the end of the day, you know, the Fluttermane stats just aren't that great in terms of HP and defense. And so I honestly say Jimmy off to a better start in this one than he was last time, but at least you do have the Iron Bundle. And like one of the key things about playing around Screamtail is at least you know it's not going to really deal damage to you, right? And so you can leverage that to your advantage. But I think playing around the Encore Disable combination is honestly so difficult. And so yeah, the question is, do you actually ignore it, or do you just try to, you know, double down onto it and KO it as quickly as possible? But it looks like Anton's decision here is to try to acrobatics at least the Iron Hands on the opposing side.
See, it's one of those things that, like, sure, if Screamtail doesn't have a partner Pokemon that's doing anything, well, then the Screamtail's also not going to do anything. But at the same time, if you just get one turn wrong and that Screamtail's able to pop off, it's done. So it's such a tricky situation. It will be that Encore onto the Iron Bundle coming out from the Screamtail. Try and make sure that the Iron Bundle's doing the same thing. Does go for the Hydro Pump, but that is the miss. It was happy going for the same move, but the miss is a huge impact. Acrobatics, that's going to bring Iron Hands down to about half, and now it's going to be able to retaliate with the Wild Charge, and what it killed there as well.
Jimmy is playing so well. I think even if Hydro Pump had connected there, the Iron Hands does have the Assault Vest, so it gets the knockout, but this is like what makes the Screamtail so dangerous, right? Because like you Encore something. Now Mousehold at least has some redirection support, but the the Iron Bundle is locked into the Hydro Pump here, and so Anton recognizes I'm not really sure there's that much I can do here, and so you know Screamtail in this one I think I didn't necessarily like just single-handedly win the game, but it created this end game where then it's really tricky because all Jimmy needs to do is then just keep going for Encore and or Disable, and there's still that Palafin waiting in the back as well. I think basically what won Jimmy that game was just that immediate Life Orb Brave Bird with that Talonflame to KO the opposing Fluttermane, and that's one thing that I think is so cool about Jimmy's team, right? It's an open team sheet tournament.